Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Yasamin Bolourian, the Director of Outreach and Dissemination at the UCLA Tarjan Center, and it is my sincere pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague and our final speaker of the forum, Dr. Christine Moody. Dr. Moody leads the post-secondary education and employment initiatives at the UCLA Tarjan Center, including multiple partnerships with the California Community College Chancellor's Office and California Department of Rehabilitation to support young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities to achieve success in education and employment. In addition to these roles, Dr. Moody is a licensed clinical psychologist and serves as the Director of Research at the UCLA Peers Clinic, where she facilitates research on the evidence-based Peers Social Skills Program for neurodivergent individuals and serves as a group leader in these programs. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christine Moody, who will be presenting on creating college success, supports, steps, and strategies for neurodivergent students.
Thank you so much, Yas, for that generous introduction. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see my slides. All right. So I'm really excited to be here today with you all, talking about ways we can create college success for neurodivergent students. And I am ready to jump in, so let's get started. I'm going to be talking somewhat broadly today, first about why college for students with neurodevelopmental disabilities like autism or intellectual disability. And then we're going to be talking about the transition to college. So highlighting some things that are different and important to prepare for in college settings. I'll share a little bit about the diversity in college options for students with disabilities, including what supports are available, and then ending to consider what students and families can be doing to prepare, and also what colleges can be doing to better serve these students, both towards creating success. I'll also have a list of resources and references at the end. So jumping in, let's see. On an individual and societal level, I really want to set the stage for why college is important for these groups. So all of these stats here are compared to broader national samples of those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And they tell us that students with developmental disabilities who attend college are more likely to achieve competitive integrated employment. So that means paid work in the community alongside those without disabilities. They show greater independence and need fewer supports at work and in daily living. They work more hours, they have better wages, they are more socially connected, and they're more likely to feel confident to date, they have better physical health, they're more likely to exercise frequently. Really, so all these benefits are so powerful, really for anybody, but especially for students with developmental disabilities who often struggle during the transition to adulthood. And more on a societal level, we also see data that shows that inclusive college settings leads to improved attitudes and reduced stigma towards those with intellectual and developmental disabilities among the broader student population and among instructors. So in a world based on the medical model, so much of the conversation is focused on challenges, deficits, differences, but not on the strengths associated with these neurodivergent groups. So when you think of autism, your first thoughts might be those social challenges or sensory differences, maybe repetitive behaviors. But autism is also associated with many strengths that we want and need in our communities, strengths that are going to serve them well in jobs, that make them a good friend and partner. And so I really want to focus on the strengths today and relate that, to college too. So here are some of the strengths, and these are pulled from research, and it captures perspectives from neurodivergent adults themselves, their family members, their teachers, professors, their employers. And as you can see, there's some really wonderful strengths that emerge when you take the time to consider them. So don't we all want friends and partners who are honest, teachers who love learning, X-ray techs, computer coders, TSA agents who have such strong attention to detail and visual acuity that they notice small anomalies? Don't we want cancer researchers that are persistent? Don't we want cashiers that are efficient and get us through that grocery line faster? And really, the same could be said about any group, neurodivergent group. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, a lot of times people think about those challenges, maybe paying attention or getting easily distracted, impulsive behavior, or, being on the go, lots of energy. And we can also be thinking about the unique profile of strengths associated with ADHD. So again, from research, here are some of the strengths associated with this population. And, these strengths really are so wonderful. Creativity that can spur new artistry in our world, curiosity and dynamic thinking, to really listen and learn about problems in our communities and solve them. How helpful would that be in politics? We need high energy in all sorts of jobs, fitness, working with young children, you got to be running around a lot. Event planners, emergency room doctors or nurses. We need adventurous people and courageous people to be tour guides around the world, people who are really willing to take a risk with a new business idea, stand up for something they believe in. And same goes for intellectual disability. Students with intellectual disability also bring so many strengths to college and the workforce and to their friends and partners. So again, pulling from the research, there's actually several articles that speak to college professors in particular about their experiences teaching students with intellectual disability in the college classroom, with this repeated theme that these students are an absolute pleasure to have in class, that they're more engaged than other students. They're raising their hand, they're asking questions, they're coming to office hours, attending lectures, nodding along. And isn't that what every professor is looking for? Students who are present, there to learn and involved. So we also see from research consistent themes of individuals with intellectual disability being dependable and hardworking, loyal. And I could guess that most companies would say that they're looking for employees with those traits. Research tells us that when individuals with intellectual disability are in a job that works well for them, they call out sick or on vacation less than their peers. They stay at the company longer, all of which benefits the team that they're a part of. Kindness and positive attitude, really that is beneficial in every setting. And I've personally been connected with many people with intellectual disability, for example, who are thriving in childcare and early childhood education settings. Both of, our children really deserve, people working with them that are kind and have that positive energy. So I want to be clear that the strengths I've shared here are not even exhaustive of everything, all the strengths that have been reported in research. And obviously every individual is different, and these patterns of strength are just that, patterns, not predictive for any individual person. But I do stand by the truth that everyone has their own unique set of strengths and areas where they need support or are looking to grow. And college can really pave the way for neurodivergent young people to do just that, to grow, to find a path that capitalizes on those strengths and interests. So hopefully I've got you all pumped up about college for neurodivergent young people. So let's jump into thinking about the transition to college, starting with some of the legal differences that are important to consider. So there's different accessibility laws that govern education in K through 12 or the high school system as compared to college. So in high school, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, guarantees rights to a free and appropriate education and allows access to special education services until high school graduation or age 21. And after exiting the high school system, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, becomes the primary law. And that really focuses on prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities in all areas of public life, including accessing education and college. So what does this realistically mean? With this shift in the law, we do see a significant shift in the roles of students and parents. So under IDEA, parents are often the primary advocate for their child. They have access to all the educational records. They have the right to attend all the IEP meetings. And actually the teacher can also serve as an advocate, and request an evaluation. And the school is required to assess the student's needs and provide appropriate services for a free and appropriate education. School attendance is required. and parents can be held liable. In contrast, under ADA in college, the student is the primary advocate for themselves and is responsible for their own academic progress, their own attendance in class, their own behaviors. They have to make sure that they're following the code of conduct for that college. And typically, college level educational records are not accessible to parents unless students sign a release of information. So as a professional working with families, I like to think about this as a shift from the parent being the advocate and the lead when their child is young, to hopefully middle school and high school parents becoming more of a partner in that advocacy process, to then more of a coach that's giving direction and scaffolding, allowing students to learn and do this on their own, and ultimately more of a mentor, someone that their adult child can check in with, to turn to for advice if needed. Overall, students in higher education are expected to self-advocate, and they must provide proof of their disability, and they must be the one to initiate contact with the disability services professionals about their needs for accommodations. And so their IEP from high school does not transfer over automatically. And I really want to emphasize that in order to receive accommodations, students must go to their college's Office of Students with Disabilities. And I'll note different colleges have different names for that office. So at UCLA, it's called the Center for Accessible Education. Another common one is DSPS, or the Disabled Students Programs and Services, and provide documentation of their disability and educational limitations caused by it. So it can be really helpful to start organizing documentation and paperwork to facilitate that process in advance. Once they get there, they'll have a conversation with a staff member in that office about their disability, their needs, and accommodations. And it's important to know, too, that while colleges do provide accommodations, they generally do not modify the curriculum in the classes or provide personal services, so one-on-one aids or speech and language therapy that might have been provided in high school. Accommodations are things like access to a quiet testing place, being able to have the textbook in an audiobook format to listen to, being able to record one's lectures or have a note taker, extended time, sensory accommodations like being able to wear noise canceling headphones. So these accommodations are meant to help students access the course content and demonstrate their knowledge with equity, but do not fundamentally change the course content or the expectations, learning expectations of the course. So if and when you're thinking about applying to college, there are two main paths for students to consider for themselves. So option one here is through the typical application process. The same process, fully integrated with other students who might be applying to that school. I think sometimes people I talk to assume that might mean they won't get any support. And that's not true. There are many different ways to get accommodations and supportive services while enrolled in college. First, like I've mentioned, all of the colleges will have an office for students with disabilities. Any student can access that office to get accommodations that will help them succeed based on their documented disability. That office can also be a good resource to identify other supportive services that are available on campus, again, open to any student. So most campuses have a tutoring center. They might have writing centers that you can go to for kind of help with grammar or proofreading. Many will have mentoring programs that can be really supportive for neurodivergent students. Beyond what is offered universally, neurodivergent students may also be eligible for state-funded services that can support in college. So in California, this is through the Regional Center, which serves individuals with intellectual disability, autism, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and other related conditions, and Department of Rehabilitation, or DOR, which serves any individual with a disability towards achieving employment goals. And often, part of achieving an employment goal is pursuit of higher education to get the training needed for a particular job. So both Regional Center and DOR kind of devise individualized support plans, but to give you an idea of how these service systems might be able to help a college student, Regional Center can provide services related to independent living and community kind of integration. So in college, that might mean, independent living skills if, you're going to be living in the dorms or off campus, cooking, laundry. It also includes transportation, so like learning how to use public transportation or take the bus to campus, and navigating the campus too, as well as tailored day services. And so this is really ways that programs can be tailored to the individual. And sometimes this can look like, individuals getting help with time management, organization, for their college classes. It might help, it might look like, like I said, kind of walking, helping students walk to and from different classes and navigating the college campus. DOR can provide financial support sometimes for tuition and books and professional clothing that's related to the individual's employment goal. So like professional clothing for an interview, for example. And there are also ways to get kind of similar services and supports, externally or not through these state-funded programs, more of a private pay or fee-for-service model. And there are options for quite comprehensive support programs that are not directly affiliated with a college, but instead support students at multiple colleges in their local area. So college living experience and college internship program are examples of these that operate, in different areas of the country. But it can also look like, hiring a coach privately for a few hours a week, so that there can be a range of kind of external services too. A second option would be to apply to a specialized college program. So these specialized programs are affiliated with the college itself and often have an intended population that they are serving, whether it's autism or intellectual disability or more broadly developmental disabilities, or even most broad neurodivergent students. More and more colleges are establishing these types of programs, and there was recent legislation passed in California, Assembly Bill 447, to really drive this forward in four-year universities. So that's super exciting. So here is a non-exhaustive list of some of the specialized college programs for those with developmental disabilities across the state. Some of these are very new, starting in the last couple of years. Some are not even on here that I know are kind of in the process of getting started. Some have been around for a long time, like our very own Pathway, which just had its 18th year of enrollment. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about each of these, but more the point I want to make is that each and every one of these programs is different. So there's not a universal model for a specialized college program. And I think that's really good because there's such diversity in developmental disabilities and neurodivergent populations. So we need different kinds of programs with different kinds and levels of supports that meet the varied needs. So although I think that diversity is good, it's also sometimes confusing. And so I want to arm you all listening today with some dimensions to kind of consider when looking into these specialized programs. So this will be applicable to outside of California as well. And the first one I want to highlight is the structure of the classes. So some of these specialized programs have a separate and required curriculum specifically for the program students to take, and often to take together. Often these will focus on things like job preparation, social relational skills, independent living skills. And there may be options to also audit classes with the general population of students on topics of interest, but to not receive credit. So perhaps less of a focus on like the academic credentials that come out of college, but more on the maturity and the responsibility and independence, facilitating that transition to adulthood that college often ushers in for young people. Some programs exclusively have their students take classes that are offered by the college for all students, with the goal being that students, receive a degree or vocational certificate. And vocational certificates, for those that might not know that term, refer to completing a series of classes that designate a certain level of training in a topic. So there's certificate programs in information technology and hospitality, welding, mechanics, becoming a nursing assistant or a medical tech, culinary positions. And so these vocational programs can really increase skills knowledge and make you more competitive for a job too. And some programs do a combination where they do have some program specific classes that their students take, but then students also take classes on campus for credit. Another thought to consider is whether the program follows more of a cohort model or an individual model. So what do I mean by that? Do students all start at the same time in the fall in the year? And are there a lot of activities that they do together as a cohort, whether that's workshops or classes or social events? Or is it more that the students can join the program at any time during the year and the support services are really delivered directly to the person without a lot of built-in contact with other students in that specialized program? I'm going to talk a little bit about ed coaching and educational coaching and career preparation on the next slide. So just to highlight the rest of these quickly, thinking about if and how the programs promote broader social inclusion, whether there's a residential living component and what that looks like, what types of supports are present, what's the setup of the rooms, like are they going to be sharing a bedroom or have their own space? And is it inclusive? Will they be paired with other students in the program or with students without disabilities? And of course, the last one here, practical pieces like cost and location, but also whether the college has classes that aligns with your interests. So in many ways, it really depends on what the students' goals are, their level of support needs, and ultimately preferences too. So I wanted to hone in on these two. So a couple of coaching supports or a couple of supports that can be useful for neurodivergent students, regardless of which kind of path they choose, the typical application process or more specialized programs. The first here is educational coaching. So we know that in the transition from high school to college, students lose their routine, their familiar peers, teachers, many lose access to services, and the academic environment becomes less structured and more independent. And that transition is hard for all students, but especially for those on the spectrum or those with developmental disabilities. And this has led to kind of historically higher risk for academic challenges and poor mental health in college. And I think that part of this might be explained, by not having the right supports in place. So there's research that, many autistic students, college students, for example, don't feel that the accommodations offered to them fully support their needs. So yes, they think extended time and priority registration is helpful, but it doesn't kind of fully meet their needs, based on their disability. And that autistic students who are offered some form of educational coaching consistently rate that as their most helpful support. So what is educational coaching? I really want to be clear, it is not tutoring. These coaches are not experts in specific academic subjects, and they are not doing the work for the student either. Their role is multifaceted, but some of the common things include helping the student stay organized. So whether that's creating an Excel or using a calendar or a planner with deadlines, helping them with executive functioning. So maybe breaking a big project down into smaller steps. Helping them navigate and access resources. So looking up tutoring center hours, where are the tutoring centers located, maybe walking over there with them, helping them log into Canvas or any sort of online portal that the college might be using and know where to submit their assignments. Social communication skills and self-advocacy. So whether that's with a group project or emailing a professor, potentially, role playing or coaching them in terms of, how to word an email. And then lastly, also academic and study skills. So, maybe creating a study schedule collaboratively with the student, or, talking about different ways to study and helping make that happen, making flashcards together or taking, finding practice tests and working on that together. So in that way, or I also want to highlight that educational coaching does not need to be a forever thing. Some students might benefit from it throughout their college tenure. However, some students really might be able to thrive after, they've had a semester or 1 year of educational coaching that really helps them get their footing, get some systems in place that work well for them. And many programs do have many of those specialized programs do have some form of educational coaching, though it can vary in terms of intensity, everything from 1 hour a week to several hours per week, or group settings versus individual coaching, and also who's providing it. So a dedicated professional versus more of a college peer who's kind of volunteering their time, and some variability too in kind of the roles and expectations of how they help, but really an important and kind of emerging best practice in terms of supporting neurodivergent college students. Another support I want to highlight as being useful for all neurodivergent college students is career preparation. So one of the goals of going to college for everybody is often to prepare us for, our career. Given that we know that there are higher rates of unemployment and underemployment, which means that someone's working in a job that doesn't fully utilize their skills and abilities in this community, this is something we really want to be mindful and intentional about. So career preparation activities can mean a whole lot of things. The opportunity to explore different paths and careers in college, which so many of us have done, opportunities to, learn interviewing and networking skills, really important, getting work experience in college. So data tells us that the greatest predictor of paid employment after school for people with developmental disabilities is having paid work experience during school. So there's so much value to having students in high school, even starting in high school, and in college, getting real experience in the workplace. Job development. This is, when you have someone working with you specifically to help you find and prepare for particular job opportunities that are in your field of interest. And it's often, kind of towards the end when you're looking for jobs. Some of these opportunities and supports are offered to all students at college, but you got to look for them. Through the Career Center, academic advising, offices for students with disabilities will often offer, workshops, job fairs for networking, career counseling, and more. So really kind of, take advantage and seek that out and ask about it. DOR and regional center services systems can also provide these services, and many specialized programs have this focus. So those two supports, educational coaching and career preparation, are two of the primary components of the college to career programs that are funded by DOR and embedded within 8 community colleges across the state. These are specialized programs for students with intellectual disability and or autism. And although each college program, each of those, even within these college to career programs, they're all a little bit different, curriculum structures. They do generally have a 3-year program timeline, have a focus on certificate completion and employment. And we work really closely with these programs at the Tarjan Center and providing training and consultation to support them on an ongoing basis through our work with the California Community College Chancellor's Office. So I want to share a little bit about the program outcomes. Part of our work with the college to career programs is that we collect some program evaluation data. And the outcomes for the C2C programs are really inspiring. And I want to drive home how the supports can drive success for students with developmental disabilities. So here are some stats about that come out of the programs across the state in a single year. So in a single year, the college to career programs serve over 300 students. So there's 8 programs, with students passing almost 90% of the courses that they take. And I want to say, in comparison to the general community college system, the overall system, that is a higher pass rate than the general population. In the last year, C2C students earned 68 vocational certificates or associate's degrees, and 184 got some sort of work experience. Of those who are exiting the program, about 60% exit with employment, often part-time, but paid. And before we move on, I really want to put that employment stat in context. So this is at the moment that they exit the program, not within the months following, where students likely do get jobs. We just don't have that data. And this is also relative to the broader rate of employment in California for those with developmental disabilities, which in 2022 was at 13.8%, so 14%. We have a lot of work to do. And then also, I want to just also put in comparison to, a national sample of neurotypical college students. So in a sample of over 560,000 college students who graduated with their bachelor's, only about 50% of the class of 2020, for example, had full-time jobs within 6 months of graduation. So in sum, we really see these programs as a good investment in the success of people with developmental disabilities. All right, all that said, what are some actionable things that you all can be doing to prepare for college and during college to support success? So these first few slides are going to be most applicable to students and families themselves. And then I have a few slides on what colleges can be doing too. So the first is thinking about self-determination. So self-determination is a big concept. It's defined slightly differently by different people, but generally refers to one's ability to act in ways where they have control and choice over their own life, where you have agency, decision-making power, and self-efficacy, where you feel like you can, achieve your personal goals. So much research shows us that self-determination is associated with all sorts of positive outcomes, everything from higher education attainment, employment, community participation, behavioral outcomes, and most importantly, quality of life. Yet neurodivergent students typically report lower self-determination than their neurotypical peers. But I want to share that this can be shifted, and we know that it can. So what are some ways to do that? I recommend students be involved in the process of advocacy, of service, establishing services, identifying goals, choosing what they want to do for fun in their free time, and hearing the results of assessments that they're a part of, so they can learn about themselves and be able and be part of all of these processes, so they can share about their experiences, their perspective, their needs. And ideally, this is a through line at all ages at kind of a developmentally appropriate level, but really amping up in middle school, high school, and it can be in a IEP or individual education planning meetings, particularly because college students are going to be expected to be their own advocate. And it's so important for them to be able to understand their disability and the areas they need support in, also their strengths, and to be thinking early about what they're interested in, what they want to learn more about, what they may want to do for their career. And so tied to this concept of self-determination is also, really thinking closely about increasing independence. So I do mean things like cooking, laundry, and transportation. But I also sometimes see a pattern where sometimes families have fought really hard for students to have more intensive supports, like a one-on-one aid, which may have been really necessary and very helpful. But sometimes then what happens is there isn't as strong of a focus on how to build skills so that intensive support can be faded. But sometimes the behaviors that caused kind of the need for that intensive support might get in the way of students' ability to be successful and independent on a college campus. So like physical aggression, inappropriate touching or boundaries, or basic safety skills. And so really, thinking and targeting, fading, supports so that students can be successful and follow the code of conduct on a college campus. Also recommend in high school and beyond that, students with neurodivergent students themselves, are setting their own goals related to different areas, education, employment, daily living. And big long-term goals are good, but even better, short-term specific goals that are actionable and achievable, really building up that sense of self-efficacy. Next, this is something I often talk about with the individuals I work with and also professionals I'm supporting who work directly with college students. So there's no one right way to learn or to organize yourself. neurodiversity is broadly defined as those range of differences in how our brains work and how we interact with the world. So we're all different, and that's normal. That's to be expected. And one example that I think is really relatable is that some of us like to listen to music or be in a coffee shop when we study. Some of us need silence or more minimal distractions, and that's okay. It's just really important to figure out what works for you. So I really encourage, this is a lifelong process, and it changes also depending on your setting and kind of the expectations. You might need, different things might work for you. But test things out, see what feels best, what system you actually keep up with, to-do lists, setting reminders, calendars, color coding, all can be really helpful, but there's so many different ways to do that. You can have online calendars, or you can have it on paper. There's all sorts of apps and websites that can help you with, to-do lists or organization. You can do reminders through your phone's alarm, or you can, send push notification. There's like a reminder app on Apple. Does color coding your notes with different color pens, bring you joy, or make you feel really organized. And that's something that's important to consider too. What makes you feel empowered and confident and motivated as you're doing this work. And that's a signal, I think, to pay attention to as well. What routine works best for you? What time of day is the best for your focus? Would you prefer to stack classes? So you have all your classes on Tuesday and Thursday, and then have, these full day breaks to study or decompress. Or maybe you would prefer to have 1 or 2 classes each day of the week. So there's lots of different variables to consider, and finding out what works for you is so important. Also encourage you to start exploring and planning early. So many families report experiencing what has now been deemed like a service cliff after exiting the high school system. So I really encourage you to be prepared and be proactive before high school ends. Start thinking about this, linking to resources or exploring college options or other options for after high school. And once in college, being proactive there too. So even if you as a student don't think you'll want or need accommodations, I still strongly suggest that you go to the Office for Students with Disabilities and get accommodations established. It can often take time to get an appointment and to get those accommodations processed. And that can be really hard if you wait until you're struggling in a class and you need those accommodations now. It's always your choice whether or not you use those accommodations. And maybe you use some, but not others. So maybe you use the priority registration. You get to sign up for classes earlier. Make sure you get things that work for your schedule and your needs. But don't use the quiet testing space. Maybe you use the quiet testing space in some classes, but not the others. If you've got a really big class that there's more people, might be more distracting. Maybe you do that quiet testing space there, but in a small seminar class, maybe not. Also encourage you to be proactive about holistic supports like mental health and social supports. So if you've used a therapist previously, perhaps revisiting that, or even, starting therapy, as since we do know that sometimes mental health can really, problems can emerge during that transition. I encourage you to be looking into clubs and social activities based on your interest on campus, to find others that you share interests with. And if that feels hard, maybe investing in some supports related to that. So the UCLA Peers Clinic offers evidence-based social skills programs. And we have many people who join us in high school or in the summer before college, or in their first year of college, really trying to set themselves up for success. And most of all, be gentle with yourself, so this is a hard transition, and making sure to take care of yourself in whatever ways that might look like for you, maybe a reduced course load at first, or, getting that mental health support, or creating space for rejuvenating activities, and finding community with others who share your similar identities. So there's so many neurodiversity clubs now starting, and neurodivergent support groups as well. All right, so I'm running out of time, but I'm going to quickly talk about colleges and talk to colleges. I know we've got many professionals on the call today, including some who might be working in higher education settings. So first, I just want to shout out our Access initiatives, which stands for Advancing College Capacity for Equitable Student Success. And we've got Access webinars and newsletters, and these are really intended to be a form of professional development and informational resource for colleges and college staff and faculty. So definitely encourage you to check that out. But my message is for colleges themselves is to really invest the time and energy and money into serving neurodivergent students. This, of course, can look like developing additional programs or supports like educational coaching, maybe or like a neurodiversity wellness or resource center. And I'll call out a great example of one that was established by some of our Tarjan advisory committee members at North Orange Community College District called Arise, if you want a model. But it can be more than than programs and services, really investing in professional development across campus. Neurodivergent students are students, first and foremost. They're going to be on campus interacting with all the different departments. So it's essential that the professional development and training is not just for those that work in the Office for Students with Disabilities or in classroom instructors, but people who work in the library, the Career Center, academic advising, registration, financial aid, admissions. All of these spaces should be welcoming and accessible to all students. And the same thing with campus design. So maybe thinking about designing sensory spaces across campus, thinking about campus events in terms of those sensory needs. So maybe having like a quiet hour for an upcoming job fair. And always seeking out and amplifying neurodivergent voices throughout. The last concept that I'm going to draw upon here is universal design for learning, which is a teaching approach that works to accommodate the needs of all learners at the outset. So this often means developing flexible learning environments. And this is something that applies beyond education to workplaces in the world at large. And there are so many different ways in which this can apply in the classroom. So normalizing movement and being accepting of movement, thinking about giving flexibility in how students demonstrate their learning, maybe giving a choice of an essay or a test at the end of the course. Or maybe if you have a weekly reflection, you can give choices of listening to a podcast on the topic or reading an article or watching a video on it. And the student gets to choose based on, how they learn and engage with material best. All right, so I've run out of time. I think I see Dr. Yasamin Bolourian's back on the screen. So I got a bunch of resources here, and my slides are available on our website and all of these are hyperlinked. So, I really appreciate your time and attention, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Moody, for such an insightful presentation and for sharing so many practical resources from specialized programs to educational coaching and community networks, all resources that can make a real difference in student success. Speaking of student success, next it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Amanda Marroquin, a UCLA Pathway alumni who graduated this past June with an early childhood education associate teacher certificate. While at UCLA, she was a proud and active member of the UCLA Latinx student group. Amanda is currently a campus aide and assistant softball coach at Belmont High School. She also works at Franklin High School in campus security and proctoring roles. Amanda is passionate about sports, especially football, softball, and basketball, and you can find her at UCLA games cheering on the Bruins. So today she'll be sharing her experiences and lessons that she learned in college. Please welcome Amanda Marroquin.
Hi, my name is Amanda Marroquin, and I'm from UCLA Pathways and alumni. I am a UCLA Pathway alum. I graduated with my early ed childhood education associate teacher certificate from UCLA Extension because I wanted to help students with other disabilities. Before Pathway, I took classes at East LA College because I wanted to go to school and I really like going to community college. I'm currently working 2 part-time jobs at local high schools. Campus aide, which is I open the door for the students to go to the bathroom and also walk around the campus. Assistant softball coaches for the head coach, and I help the students to succeed in their sports and stuff. Security for different events and proctoring for high schools for the SATs. On a personal note, heritage Colombian and Salvadorian, I'm close to my family, including my pets. I love to travel because my favorite sport is soccer and also like to do fitness with my family. While at UCLA, I was part of the Latinx group because I was the one that found out before anyone, and I decided to join the group at UCLA. Next, my college experience. I lived with roommates in Pathways, which was new for me because I didn't know it. I didn't know them at first, but I was so scared and nervous. I was It was learning experience. Being respectful to roommates is it's always you always have to be respectful with your roommates, handling disagreements with your roommates, and also if you need help, you could have overnight staff that could help you with that. Independent skills, cooking for myself was pretty good because I didn't have they had to check up on me while cooking. I was on my own. Next, things that help me in my classes. Being organized is the way that my mom taught me because she's the one that taught me to have an agenda and write things down. Using an agenda is helpful because you know what you have to put, and when you're done, you could cross it out. Figuring out what to work on first. Um, when I was in my classes, I needed um homework. I needed help with my homework. I had my ed coaches help me with my homework, my brother, my mom. Tutoring and education coaches from Pathways, helping me understand my assignment. By that, helping me understand my assignment is because there's sometimes I didn't know how to do the homework, so that's why I asked for help. Figuring out how I study best. I listen to music on my own because I like to have music on while I'm studying. Don't get distracted by other people because I really get distracted when I have a lot of people and it makes me overwhelmed. Next, things that were hard in my classes. Using my UCLA online portal to find assignments or information because in my physiology class, I couldn't log into my UCLA login portal because it was kind of hard for me to log in. I was told I couldn't get accommodation even though I had an IEP in high school and accommodation at community college, and I felt I needed them because I needed help when I was taking the early education courses, and it was hard for me to do those. Professors being rude when I needed time to think, or having trouble explaining myself because I at one point she was telling me that she had me to do a an assignment, and I tried to look it up on my phone, and she told me you couldn't do it, and I was so like I froze. Thank you. I mean, next, working experience in college. I was inspired by UCA coaches and working in a team. I was always interested in coaching, but I felt more sure my internship. Why I wanted to become a coach is because when I was little, I wanted to be able to see if I could make it as a better coach. I became more responsible through working. I like how the internship I had a routine while I was at UCLA, giving me a clear step on how to do things on my own because I didn't have to. They only told me one time, and then I had the experience. Prepared me for my job now is because I have responsibilities and also be independent by doing stuff at work now. Next, college helped me to interact with new people in all different settings like roommates, classes, and internships. I made friends weekly, lunch together, connect with coworkers over sports and Bruin spirit. Got phone numbers and social medias because I I'm actually a friendly person and a social butterfly when it comes to meeting new people. Next, advice. Trying out different jobs or different opportunities because it's good to have more skills because in the long run it's gonna make you better. Make friends with other students because for me it was hard because when I was in elementary it was hard for me to make new friends. Communication is the key because it's just easy to communicate with others. Try to do things on your own because sometimes you could do it and sometimes you can't do it. Be willing to ask for help and know who to go for help because sometimes if you need the help, you could get the help and you you could actually be better if you have the help. Next, help students get the accommodation they need. Educational coaches for all students. Training professors to be more patient with their students because sometimes you have good professors, sometimes you have bad professors. In the good note and the bad note. To help students understand the assignment is because when one student doesn't understand, but the other student does, and it's pretty good to have other students to understand the assignment. Because so you won't get stuck on it. Next. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for your important reflections today. And again, to Dr. Moody, again, for that insightful talk. To our audience, please submit your questions for Dr. Moody and Amanda in the Q&A. And in the meantime, I'll start us off with a few questions. So the first one is for Dr. Moody. Dr. Moody, you talked about the positive impact that educational coaching can have on autistic students' college experiences or neurodivergent student experiences. And we have a few questions in the chat about that. The first question is asking if educational coaching is also available through disability support services on college campuses. And relatedly, is educational coaching the same as academic mentoring?
So great questions. So unfortunately, on most campuses, educational coaching is not available through the Office of Students or for Students with Disabilities, or DSPS. And that's because it's not, it's considered a service or support that goes above and beyond what's required per ADA and 504 and Title V. And so some colleges, there's a growing kind of recognition that this can be a really helpful support, particularly for this population of neurodivergent students. And so some colleges are, investing in this and are offering it to students that are registered through their DSPS. But that's, I would say, unfortunately, pretty rare at this time, given that it does require, funding and time and effort. So I hope that that will change in the future, and it'll be more of a consistent or even mandated kind of support for students. I know Amanda really appreciated her educational coach too. But in the meantime, there definitely are ways to access that support. So a lot of those specialized programs do have educational coaches embedded in the design of the specialized program. And then also regional center services vendors can and do provide services similar to educational coaching. So those are ways to kind of access in the meantime. The second part of that question about academic mentoring and whether it's the same, I will say that there are different names for educational coaching right now out there in the literature and in the world, because it is kind of an emerging practice, an emerging thing that is relatively new. So definitely could be the same as academic mentoring. If those, whoever asked that question is like looking at that being like, oh, that's what my academic mentors do, then definitely. But there could be also some subtle differences as well. In just from program to program or kind of definitionally.
Thank you for clarifying some of the differences and similarities between the two. Amanda, we have a question for you in the chat. And we have an audience member asking, what advice would you have for a high schooler thinking about college?
You rather go forward and also go to a community college and then transfer to a four-year college.
I think that's such good advice. Yeah, it could be a way to make that transition smoother. And that's what you did, Amanda. You did ELAC, right? And then yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Amanda. We also have a question in the chat for you. Everyone's really curious about your studies and your journey. Someone's asking, based on your experience, would you go to college again, maybe to study something else?
Yes. No.
Like in the future, you think? Is that what they're asking? Yes.
I think so. Yeah. I guess they're wondering if Amanda had a positive experience, enough to maybe want to go through college again.
Yes, I would want to go to college again, but right now it's so expensive right now, and I didn't have financial aid at first because my parents had to pay out of pocket. And now, since I graduated at UCLA, I'm now an alumni at UCLA, and I usually go to the games with my coworkers, and I feel like want to go back again, but at the same time, it's so expensive to go to UCLA, and I wish I could stay, but I didn't have the money to go back.
Well, you're getting lots of praise
Maybe
in
in
the
the
chat.
future.
Maybe in the future. You're getting lots of praise in the chat. Thank you. I love all this information. So this has been very informative so far for folks on the call. The next question is for Dr. Moody.
I also have another one.
Yes, please.
Also probably go back to community college. Also. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people like, you know, community college can be a great place for like lifelong learning in terms of, you know, going back and taking a class here or there. And I know, Amanda, you've shared with me that you're, you know, right now really working towards getting, you know, a job in that early childhood education, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
very exciting.
So once a Bruin, always a Bruin.
Yes.
Yep.
And go Dodgers.
Go Dodgers. Definitely. Dr. Moody, you mentioned that autistic students need to disclose their diagnosis to receive accommodations. What advice would you give to parents and caregivers who have a transition age, you know, youth or young adult who may not necessarily want to disclose when they get to college?
Yeah, it's such an important issue. And actually there's, you know, data that's, you know, shows that the numbers of students who do disclose are actually very low compared to the population of individuals with or students with disabilities on campus. The estimates are, you know, anywhere from 20% to, you know, 40% of people who have a disability are disclosing to the campus office for students with disabilities. So it's definitely something that's a common kind of consideration. I do, like I mentioned in my talk, I do strongly recommend that even if you aren't thinking that you'll need or use accommodations in college, I do think it's beneficial to talk to the Office of Students with Disabilities and, you know, get established is the way I like to think about it. Because then you have more choice in what supports you're able to access. And you can make those choices in the moment based on the class or based on the, you know, the structure, the size, the content. And so it can be really empowering to have access to those accommodations that are going to be supportive to our students. And I think, you know, of course there are, you know, considerations in terms of disclosing, you know, in lots of different contexts. And I hope, and I know we're working, you know, Tarjan Center, you know, to be working towards reducing that stigma, reducing any sort of concerns about disclosing, because ultimately we all have different strengths and different areas that we do need support, and giving students the supports that they need is going to allow them to succeed and increase equity in our systems and world. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but I would recommend, you know, I guess I recommend going to the Disability Services Office. They work with people with disabilities, you know, regularly, and You can talk to them too about, there's considerations around privacy, and you can talk to them about that if you don't want it disclosed, to other campus departments, for example.
Yes, absolutely. I think the last thing any student would want is to need some sort of service, maybe right before a test, and not have the system set up to support them in that moment, right? So it's better to set it up beforehand and not use it even if you don't want to. Amanda, we have a question for you in the chat. Someone wants to know, what was your favorite part of college? Oh, I think you're muted, Amanda. Happens to the best of us.
My favorite college was, my favorite part of college was going to the football games with my friends and also my coworkers, because I will see them at the game. And also going out with them for dinner and lunch. And yeah.
They're all fun things. You're getting us all excited for the weekend. Thank you.
Also to be independent.
Yes, that's a great point. Very great point. Colleges give you that opportunity to explore your independence. Dr. Moody, you reported on some pretty impressive program outcomes from the college to career programs. For some of the providers and facilitators of support programs in our audience, what would you say contributes to the C2C success?
I mean, so many things, but I mean, I do work, so we work closely with the college to career program staff, and I just have to say that they are also dedicated and passionate about their work and about supporting students. And, I feel like in our work with those programs that, it's like a mutual learning exchange where we're all, sharing our tips and thoughts, and, the different, all 8, we meet together, all 8 college to career programs. And so they are all able to kind of support each other as well. And so I think that that is such a great strength that those programs have, that they are not in a bubble. They're learning from each other. They have the Tarjan Center as a resource. So they're connected to others that are doing this work, and are able to, ask, if they've got a tricky situation, or, wondering about, doing something new on their campus. We have one program that's starting up with residential, options. And so they're thinking about that and learning from other C2Cs that have that. So I think that that's definitely something that helps support their success, not above and beyond just the dedication and passion. I think the educational coaching in particular, like I mentioned, is such an emerging best practice. And the idea of that, that basically they're taking a lot of the pieces that of being a college student that can be overwhelming or confusing and hard at first, and giving students the tools to make their academic success more approachable and achievable, by kind of, increasing structure a little bit. That huge transition from high school to college, high school, you've got homework assignments every day. Whereas in college, you have one big project that's due after 6 weeks. And so, really helping, the students to kind of break that up and make a plan, and, having a little bit of accountability of, how's that going, can be really, really powerful, I think. Particularly since we know that many neurodivergent students struggle with executive functioning, which involves a lot of those planning and organizational skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing is maybe forming some collaborations with others instead of staying in a silo, and creating some structure. Great tips there. Let's see here. Amanda, we have a question from a parent. So a parent is asking, what kind of support from your family was most helpful while you were in college? Oh, let me.
So my brother was he graduated from Cal and also helped me to get into UCLA because of the experience that he had, and he also took a special ed class, and he took it because of me. And he had the patience to help me with the college experience. And also my mom and my dad were there for me when I had the tough times and stuff. And it was kind of hard because I was living away from home, and sometimes I called them for advice and just be there for me and stuff.
Wow, it sounds like you have such a supportive family. People you can
Yes,
call.
I do.
Yeah, people you can call whenever you need and lean on for help. It sounds like your brother is is very close with you and has been there for you.
Yes,
That's
he has.
that's great. And maybe this is a question for both of you, Amanda and Dr. Moody. What changes do you think would improve the college experience for neurodivergent students?
More support for the special needs people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, I think that that concept of universal design is such an important one. It's such a big idea and concept. But there are so many ways that it can be implemented to really help all kinds of learners to succeed. And I think so, like traditionally, our college system has been like stuck in this, almost like rut of like, basically like, you have a midterm and a final, and, it's a Scantron test, and there's only, certain amount of time that you can take the test, and that's what your entire grade is based on. And so I know, like, I mean, we've been learning more and more, from research, like that's just not good pedagogy. It's not good teaching. And so definitely, I don't want to say there's lots of professors out there that are doing amazing things and working to make their classes more inclusive, but I think there's still so much more we can be doing. And I also want to say I know from being a teacher myself that making some of those changes can be hard, and it's challenging and different, and changes is challenging. And sometimes it takes some time at the beginning to get used to, or to, you have to learn something new, some new skills. And it can be so rewarding. So, I think, just encouraging professors to be taking steps towards that and investing in universal design principles. And some of our access webinars, like I just did a access webinar a couple of weeks ago that really went a little bit deeper into some more specific strategies for college instructors. So I recommend that.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm assuming the link to some of the access webinars is on the resource slide that you provided.
It is. Yep.
Perfect. Wonderful. We have one question here that's asking, do you know if there are any initiatives in place to provide more timely supports? I know many students who have tried to get accommodations, but it can take a long time. Any advice for students who are kind of stuck in that lengthy process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a problem that is I hear about across, like, not just at UCLA, at a lot of campuses. And that, I mean, it brings me back to colleges investing more in serving students with disabilities, because these counselors in the, the DSPS offices or offices for students with disabilities are booked back to back to back to back with, counseling appointments, and really have such large caseloads. And so, it's true that it can take weeks or a month to get an appointment. And so I think that's like a systemic issue that I definitely think would, needs to be thought about and addressed. And in the meantime, encouraging students to, start the process early and reach out early. A lot of community college students, or community colleges now are having intentional efforts to kind of connect to the high school districts, and actually have students like enroll and apply in their last year of high school, and then start do their intake appointment with DSPS in the summer or in the spring before they start classes. So things are really set up right away. And so I think that's a nice model too, to be, thinking about this even before the fall starts.
Wow, that's very proactive, and I can see that being very successful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that brings us to the end of our session here. So once again, a big thank you to Dr. Moody and Amanda for an informative session and their wonderful contributions to our annual forum here.